With a perhaps more conventional approach now to issues of serious sustainability, we're going to examine the questions of the world's oceans, which obviously are important to all of us. They are most of the world's surface and nearly all of its unmapped and unknown areas. It's no surprise to anyone here that they're also under unsustainable stress. Our next speaker, Sylvia Earle, knows as much about this as anyone on the planet, ashore or afloat. In 1979, she walked untethered on the seafloor at a lower depth than any human being before or since. That's 1,250 feet below the Earth's ocean surface off the island of Oahu. She described this adventure in her book, Exploring the Deep Frontier. She currently has the best job title on Earth, which is Explorer in Residence at the National Geographic Society. And she's going to tell us about serious sustainability in the world's seas, what the problems are, and what the solutions might be. Sylvia Earle.
Now for something completely different. So we're living in a time of dramatic change, the theme for this conference says. No kidding. I have my personal roots deep into the pre-Googleozoic. Like some of the rest of you, I've witnessed in my lifetime revolutions that are technologically, politically, socially, medically, environmentally greater than during all preceding human history. And I have 15 minutes to make a case for why we have to amp up technology to explore the ocean, why it's critically important to put the ocean solidly on the balance sheet concerning climate change, now being seriously neglected, why protecting the integrity of ocean systems, living systems, through networks of having protected areas in the sea, translates to an insurance policy for us and a greater chance of sustainability on this little planet. Why we have to seriously put the brakes on industrial scale extraction of ocean wildlife and put the brakes on putting into the sea some of the toxic things that we have allowed to flow there and continue to do so. And why we have a closing window of opportunity to take actions that literally could make all the difference in the world. But first, it's important to acknowledge what those changes have been in the ocean. During this period that some of us share, the last half century, we've lost 90% of the commercially extracted, the big fish in the sea, things like tunas and sharks and swordfish and groupers and snappers and rockfish and salmon and what do you really like to eat. We have seen, just in the last 25 years, the explosion of about 300 dead zones around the coastal waters of the world. We've seen the loss of about half of the coral reefs, either the complete loss or the serious decline, half of those ancient ecosystems. We've seen a changing chemistry in the ocean, which means changing chemistry in the planet as a whole. Well, that's a lot of bad news, but there is some good news to follow. I think that the best news is that during the same period of time, we have learned more than during all preceding human history. And we have the capacity now to communicate what is being discovered. Power shifts that are changing the world, topic of this conference, well, perhaps nothing is more important than the power of knowing that we are utterly dependent on the natural systems that make life possible, and that these systems are in trouble. They've been ravaged by us, mostly unwittingly, because we've, up until recently, thought that the ocean was inexhaustible, that what we put into the sky didn't really matter. We have not really respected the basic processes that make life on Earth possible. We definitely need a shift from complacency to action, to do our utmost to avoid the accelerating move toward extinction of a species on the planet that many of us are fond of. That would be us. We need the technology to explore the ocean. It's about where aviation technology was early in the 20th century. Less than 5% of the ocean has been seen let alone explored. We've got a lot to do to get to know this part of the solar system. Think of what we've learned in 50 years. While we've lost so much, what we've learned. As a student in the 1950s, when I started to explore the ocean, before the existence of mid-ocean ridges were known to exist, before we knew about plate tectonics, before we knew that the continents really do move around, before the discovery of hydrothermal vents and the domain kingdom of life known as the Archaea, and before the discovery not only that microbes are abundant in the ocean, but that they rule the chemistry of the ocean and ultimately the world. When I first began to explore the ocean, it was thought that there was no limit to what we could put into the ocean and get away with it, or what we could take out of the ocean and get away with it. So I think that two of the big discoveries of the 20th century about the ocean were first that the ocean does have limits, but the second one, and it's gradually dawning on us, that all life on Earth really depends on the existence of the ocean. If the ocean's in trouble, the planet's in trouble. If the planet's in trouble, we're in trouble. No doubt about it, the ocean is in serious trouble, and therefore, so are we. The biggest problem, though, is not what's happening there, it's that we're oblivious to it. Ignorance is a real problem, but the solution to that is knowing. And that's really where we are right now, with the power to communicate what's happening and then to do something about it. I gave a talk at the World Bank last year, and I showed this image, there we are, and pointed out, there it is. We're looking at the World Bank. All the assets are there. We've been burning through the natural systems that sustain us as if our lives did not depend on them, but assuredly they do. We can use the assets, we just shouldn't be on this course to use them up, and that's where we're headed. With all of our amazing technologies, we don't know how to make another one. Tom Friedman says the world is flat, but actually the world is mostly blue. A recent article in The Economist proclaimed that the new green is blue. Well, long before there was any green, there was blue. Without the blue, without water, without the ocean that holds 97% of Earth's water, there could be no green, and no us either. Most people recognize that our appetite for energy, fueled by burning fossil fuels, has set in motion unintended cataclysmic consequences, illuminating, powering our way down a dangerous path, generating the CO2 in the atmosphere that has not only accelerated the planet's natural warming trend, but given rise to this dangerous acidification of oceans. The accelerating trend toward warming has caught even pessimistic climatologists off guard. It's the speed of change, coupled with the gaps in understanding, that are most breathtaking, literally. Just last week, on the 12th of September, the low point for 2008 was reached, and it wasn't quite as great as this cataclysmic 2007 last year, but it was still about 33% less than average. This is bad news for polar bears, and it's bad news for the rest of us as well. It's not just what we're putting into the ocean that we can't see, but it's also the millions of tons of debris that are literally clogging the planet's circulatory system. New since I began exploring the ocean half a century ago. It's not all bad news. This turtle was one of the lucky ones that was freed from its encumbrance, but many simply die. Knowing you have a problem is the first step towards solving it. When I began diving years ago, I was told to look out for man-eating sharks. I stopped worrying when I realized that, hey, I don't qualify. But on the other hand, we do have to worry now about man-eating sharks. We extract on the order of 100 million a year. 100 million. The ocean simply cannot sustain that level of extraction, largely to satisfy a growing luxury market for shark fin soup. It's amazing. More than 90% of the big fish, such as I said, the tuna, the swordfish, the grouper, the snapper, the wild salmon. They're simply gone. We know where they went. We've eaten them. In ignorance of the clear connection between ocean and climate change, the ocean and health, the ocean and prosperity, the ocean and human survival, we are systematically dismembering the underpinnings of those systems that hold the ocean together and make possible everything we care about. Maybe you saw Forrest Gump and saw the trawl that came up with a little bit of shrimp and a whole lot of everything else. Trawls are one of the real problems for the ocean today. They're like using bulldozers to catch songbirds. You knock down the forest and you extract a little bit of protein, but you throw most of what you catch away. Presently, we have the power to eliminate the big things in the ocean, including the largest creatures ever to live on the earth. The good news is we almost did it, but we stopped short of eliminating the great whales. That's the good news. When we know, we can start to care, and we can start to take actions. But right now, don't apply the same attitude to the fish, but that may change. Meanwhile, we're on a pathway that some style and call the sixth extinction. And we're not just driving it, we are very much along for the ride. What's at risk? Coral reefs? Well, of course, already we can see the sharp decline, partly driven by climate change, partly driven by extraction of the big fish, the little fish, the medium-sized fish, the lobsters, the parts, the bits, the pieces that make a coral reef other than just the coral. They're intensely diverse systems, and we are systematically pulling them apart. Creatures that we've just begun to discover, just begun to give names to some of these creatures. I'm not alone in believing that the next decade will make all of the difference, one way or the other. We can't go back, but we can make the future better by putting ourselves in context to realize that we're a part of the natural systems. We're not apart from them, that these guys matter, not just as something to eat or not because they're pretty or give you a scare or whatever it is, because they make the planet work. In a blink of a geologist's eye, information technology has given humankind the power of knowing. And with that knowing comes caring. And with that caring, there's hope that we can figure out a way to have an enduring place for ourselves, along with the rest of life on Earth. In my time, I have shared the experience that all of you have to be able to literally hold the world in your hands. Now, anybody who can access the internet can see the world, to see ourselves in context, to look at ourselves with new eyes. I thank you, Google, I do, for making this possible. Thanks to Google Earth, I can look at the clouds around the world and see how the ocean and the atmosphere, the land and the life are all connected, and can visualize how the ocean drives climate and weather, see that ocean of air above coupled with the ocean of water below, how they're bonded. We can track storms on Google Earth, and we can begin to appreciate that with every drop of water that we drink, every breath that we take, we're connected to the ocean. We're connected to the living world. I can't resist taking you on a lightning tour around the planet and take a look, first of all, where we are. Zonk, right there. Huh. Smile. And then to look at our Google's backyard. Let's go down the coast after we sort of inspect the Googleplex and see what it is like in Monterey. In fact, it's so cool to be able to hold the world in your hands and to find a place like the Grand Canyon and fly through it. But right now, let's look at the Monterey Canyon and dive into it. Imagine that you're out there under the depths. You don't just have to imagine yourself a seabird flying over the area. but be an otter for a while, or a seabird along the edge. Look at that canyon from the inside out. It's deeper, wider, longer than the Grand Canyon. But you can go to Monterey and not even know it's there, unless you have a cute little sports car to go underwater, dive down to 2,000 feet, like the little deep worker that I've had the joy of using during the Sustainable Seas project with the National Geographic, with funding from the Richard and Rhoda Goldman Foundation and NOAA. It was a public-private industry government partnership. 5 years, from 1998, when Google was just getting underway, to 2003, and now it's continuing with a look around the world at other places that can be explored, with a bend toward education, research, and communicating to the world what is going on out there in the blue part of the planet. One of the reasons I love Google Earth is that you can show what's happening. Let's go to a place inland, to West Virginia, where mountaintop removal is the way of life for that part of the planet, to extract coal. You can actually see what it takes to get those black rocks out from underneath the green cover, and what happens to the debris, how it is used to fill streams, fill valleys. It doesn't just go away. Restoration of these areas doesn't mean that they put it back the way it was. It's really hard to put a leaf of a tree back the way it was, let alone a forest. Actually, a similar project in this part of the world, California, took place not long ago, and looking at forests, and it was said by those who were doing the cutting of the forests that it wasn't fair to use Google Earth to show the consequences of the deforestation. Was it fair to show what the shrimpers are doing in the Gulf of Mexico when they trawl, scraping the seafloor, leaving these great plumes of sediment, extracting tons of wildlife that simply get discarded so that we can enjoy something that is relatively new on our menus in recent times? Or let's go over to China, where they don't even have to burn gasoline in some cases. They just anchor and let the currents bring the creatures into their nets. It's amazing what human ingenuity can do to extract wildlife. These are ships with their trawls that you'll see out to catch whatever happens to be swept into them, but nonetheless leaving great plumes of sediment in their wake and extracting from the ocean many tons of wild creatures. Aquaculture shows real promise, but there's some real problems, something that is hard to cram into a short presentation. It deserves its own space at some point. But it took us 10,000 years to get around to looking at various kinds of aquaculture, agriculture, and now we're moving into the aquaculture era at a time when the planet is changing. You just swept by Antarctica and looked at the changing ice there. Now let's look at the Arctic, where, again, where the changes are taking place with breathtaking speed. I went to the North Pole in 1998, and there was a fair amount of solid ice right at the North Pole. Today, we're seeing a rapidly changing top of the world. Here, just fast-forwarding over the years, winding up with the present time, with a big gap of dark water that does not provide the kind of haven that is needed for creatures such as you're about to see on this little video clip. Thanks to the National Geographic, we'll take a dive under the ice to share the view with creatures who rely on ice. Without it, they don't have a home. The seals, the narwhals, the famous furry canary in the coal mine, not the coal mine, in the Arctic, the frozen mine, not just the seals, but the polar bears, who absolutely are dependent on the world more or less the way it has been over thousands of years. Now, these are known as sea canaries. So maybe they're the appropriate polar canaries to give us an alert that something's not right. The ice whale, the great bowhead whale, no home other than in the Arctic waters. The changes in the polar seas, polar areas, obviously are affecting the world as a whole. The consequences of the melting ice. Let's take a look at what the consequences are at a place that many people know and love, that you can imagine with in this case, a 12-meter rise in sea level. You think Wall Street is having trouble now? We don't know how fast this is going to take place. It will happen in due course. Sea level rises, sea level falls over the ages, but it's the speed of change that should have our rapt attention. We should be as concerned about this as if our lives depend on it, because it really does depend on, our lives do depend on what's happening to the natural world. And we have our hands on the wheel. Let's go now to a place where we can warm up a little bit, to Australia, where that warming up a little bit is causing problems, not just with a warming ocean, but also acidification of the oceans. These ancient reefs, the existing ones have been around for at least 20,000 years, but there's evidence of a history that goes back for 500,000 years, more or less in this same area. Ice ages have come and gone. Climate has been warmer and colder during the time when there have been coral reefs in this area. The difference is we are now on the scene. We are in the anthropogenic phase of life history of the planet and seeing unprecedented modification of places that are not just beautiful, but they're, again, really important to making the planet function the way it does. If you started diving 25 years ago, you know that dives today are dives into a different ocean. I want to swiftly take a look into the Mediterranean Sea for one special reason, that there's a creature there known as a Napoleon wrasse that is documented by a group that's based in the UK called Archive. They are doing their best to document endangered wildlife while we still have a chance to see them. A lot of people haven't gotten to see a creature of this sort and will have to hurry because their lips sell for a high price. $1,000 lips on this gorgeous fish. They used to be really common throughout the Indo-Pacific, but like many other creatures in the sea, wildlife, they have felt the bite of the biggest predator yet to reach the planet. That would be, again, that's us. Now, finally, I want to take you to the other side of the world to look at the place where the deepest part of the ocean actually exists. That's the Mariana Trench. And before zooming back to home base, I want to just comment on this. It is a worthy goal for exploration. Imagine pulling together the talents and resources that will make it possible to see the ocean from the inside out, top to bottom, and put ourselves in perspective. It's been done once in 1960 for about 20 minutes, when Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh used this fancy machine to spend that short time in the deepest part of the sea, as deep in the sea as you fly in the sky to get to this conference. But think of it, only 2 people in all of history have been there. I think it may change in the near future. Peter Diamandis, you'll hear from him tomorrow about the X Prize, and some of his colleagues are putting together an X Prize to go to the deepest part of the ocean and to otherwise find ways to stimulate exploration of the sea. Wouldn't you like to see what it's like 7 miles down where the pressure outside is 16,000 pounds per square inch? I mean, I would. And I'd like for you to come along and come back. I mean, round trips are the only way to go. Finally, let's go to Google's backyard again for the final look at the ocean. Take a deep plunge into the canyon, stopping by the aquarium along the way. It's a halfway house for fish and people. a good place for you to go and get a flavor of the ocean if you have this thing about not getting wet yourself. You can do it vicariously, and thanks to the view that we now have to see the world with new eyes, to explore the world above water and to some extent to look at the depths below. Imagine taking a dive. Galileo helped us understand that Earth is not the center of the universe. That goes back a while, but what is it going to take to cause us to understand that we are not the center of the universe, that we're a part of the natural systems, not apart from them? A century ago, it seemed like conquering the wilderness of the world was a good idea, but the ethic of caring and taking place of wild places began in the 20th century, and now as we reach into the 21st, the ocean is beginning to be on the balance sheet as well. As we understand that what we do to the ocean, to this blue planet, has consequences. With knowing, that's the key. That's the magic key that we all share right now that our predecessors could only dream about, access to the knowledge that we now have available to us. I told students at American University when they graduated of May of this year that they're a part of the luckiest generation. So are we. We know we have problems. It's the first giant step towards solving them. As never again, we may have a chance to do something about it. Lots of good reasons for hope. The human mind, our spirit, the power of knowledge, the resilience of nature. But we don't have a lot of time. The next 10 years may be the most important, influential in the next 10,000 years. I'd like to thank the National Geographic, David Reardon, Sea Studios, Mark Shelley, and certainly the Google Earth team for helping to bring this view of the world to you. Thank you.